We are live. This is Dean with the Two Party Podcast. I am here with Mitch, and I may slay your name. Is it Lagadin?
Oh, not even close.
Not even
Lagadin.
close.
Lagadin,
Yes,
yeah.
Lagadin. Okay, so kind of like it looks.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've been doing that all morning, so
It
I'm
is a hey,
awesome.
it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'll give you
The
that.
last guest I had was Al Bulgaria, so
Oh
I
boy.
killed that one
Oh,
as
so
well.
mine's easy compared to
Hey,
that. Yeah.
so again, Mitch, I wanted the audience to kind of, I always have a guest on, and I want them to the audience to know them from their words. And so I want to introduce you. Obviously, first I don't want to ruin your name, but I did. But I want to have you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from,
Yeah.
what you do, and then maybe a little bit about your story. Go ahead.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, so my name is Mitch Lagadin. I'm host well, I guess first of all, I'm in Calgary, Canada, and I know
Okay.
you're based down in Tulsa,
Tulsa.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Right. I actually
Yeah.
used to live in Tulsa, so
Did
just kind of
you?
a cool, yeah, I spent a
That's
lot of
awesome.
grade school there. Anyways,
Very cool.
yeah, so I'm the host of Slow Down Man, the podcast, which was a bit of a COVID project, and has just kind of taken off from there. But essentially, the premise behind the podcast is to help young men bring consciousness, bring awareness to unconscious patterns in their lives. And how that was spurred for me, and by the way, with that is to kind of break down some of the woo-woo stereotypes, especially amongst young men around mindfulness, the mindfulness space. Mindfulness has been a big part of my life for the past, I don't even know how many years. And, and I think that at one point I realized like I felt guilty or not guilty. I felt awkward or almost like weird about talking to my buddies about, I meditate or I
Right.
am into this type of self-help content. I don't think it's very commonplace for men to
Right.
have these
It's not
conversations.
manly.
It's exactly. It's not masculine, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I during COVID just thought it would be a cool thing to kick off a podcast, creating content that resonates with men. Now, getting back to my story, I know it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So when I was in university way back, I struggled with panic anxiety, in that, particularly around performances. So like during tests and things
Yeah.
like that. But it got, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It got bad at one point. And there's a lot of other things contributing to that, which now I have awareness of, which is like my
Hmm.
diet. I was eating so much like just
Yes.
pizza and crap,
Food.
drinking so much.
Food is, people don't realize there's so much when you take in your food and just ingredients. So bad for you. Just so
Dude,
bad.
yeah, you are what you eat, as they say.
Yes. 100%.
You are what you eat. So yeah, in hindsight, there's a lot of things playing into this, but went to therapy that really helped and kind of got me back on a good track. But quite honestly, the biggest thing that helped me deal with this was mindfulness. It was developing a meditation practice. It was, and not even just that. Like meditation's one thing, but it's the daily practice of just connecting with my breath, having awareness of the body, mind, and spirit, and having those tools so that if I ever had anxiety going through that time, I would know how to deal with that. I could come into my body, I could breathe, and yeah. Long story short, now that that's in the rear view mirror, it's changed my life, and I'm hoping to help push it out there to other men maybe going through similar things, or even if they're not, just looking at the ways that it can benefit them as well.
Excellent, excellent. And that's maybe this was just a meant to be interview this morning because the past 2 weeks, that's what I've been doing and pushing a lot on some of our social media live. I've been doing a lot of live interviews, and what the topic of those live interviews have been is to reach out to anybody and everybody out there struggling with depression or struggling
Mm,
with anxiety. And what that looks like is me literally on live telling our audience where they can get resources and where they can get help.
mhm,
Not just that, but where you can step outside of yourself to help other people. And
mhm,
that's what I'm hearing from you is you're taking it, you're just freely taking an opportunity in your life and in your journey to do something for other people, a selfless act of helping other people come to know this mindfulness. And in order to do so, you do have to, it's you're helping other people and you're intentionally doing it. But what we've been discussing the past 2 weeks is helping others, period. In everyday life, holding a door, giving a smile, a compliment. You're in the drive-through buying your food, and buy the food behind you. Get the car behind you and drive off. You don't have to wave at them. Just buy their food.
Dude, yeah.
People, you can look someone right in the eye and not know they're at home with an abusive spouse. They're suicidal. They suffer depression, anxiety. These are all things where every day we're passing people that are dealing with this. And all it takes to get them out of that moment for 1 second, if it helps for 1 second to get an abused spouse out of the moment they're in by giving them a compliment on their outfit or something silly. It seems so silly, but at the same time, we start building habits in ourselves. It helps changing the dynamic of what we think and what we're doing.
Right.
And I'm doing kind of a 30-day challenge myself to help bring that pattern into my life and make me more to where when I look across somewhere and I see somebody struggling, it's not a do I go help? It's just instinct that I'm going to start walking that way and helping. And that's what I'm trying to encourage to a lot of people in our audience. So that's what I'm hearing with what you're doing. Tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, I love that. By the way, before I tell you more about it, I just say that I love what you just said about, spreading kindness. I know that's a very overused
It's the cheapest thing we can do. It's the cheapest thing you can do for someone.
And, we talk about that a lot on the show, is that like, it doesn't have to be this radical act either. It doesn't have to be, you have to buy them a gift.
Yep.
It could just be recognizing the humanness of the other person and having compassion for them as just being another, if it's a homeless person or something, having compassion for them being a human being. And that's a big buzzword in mindfulness as well. There's a ton of self-compassion and compassion for others, meditations that you can do to help instill that within you. Anyways, I just wanted to touch on that because I love what you just said there. As far as telling you more about slow down, man, the other, I guess, aspect to it that I want to push home through the guests we bring on and whatnot is, first of all, encouraging dudes to look inward, as I've mentioned, but also simultaneously encouraging men to open up and share. And which is not a very common thing to do.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of that.
We don't share our emotions and we don't ask for help. That's two things us men fail at.
Yeah. And you look at anyone who's played sports growing up, that, if you hurt your ankle or whatever, it's always about repress.
Yeah. Brush it off.
Brush it off, play through the pain. And that's carried over in a larger sense to masculinity and common modern notions of what masculinity means. And so that, and I think, by the way, that's the traditional way of looking at it. I do think, and through talking to a lot of the people that I brought on the show, there's a movement going the other way.
Right.
There's a men's movement happening. And we talked about this. I had Dr. Robert Glover on the show in last week's episode, and he's been in the men's space for years, and he says he's so optimistic about what's happening.
That's good.
So it's good to see. And through the Slow Down Man podcast, I'm just trying to, bring on people and help a few dudes.
It's good. Like you said, with his perspective and with the podcast, you're creating a shift. And as he's saying, there's already a shift there. You're helping to support that shift. And, for us men, what's dynamic about me is some of my past as an addiction, as an alcoholic, suffering from depression, anxiety, having post-traumatic stress, all the things I've done in my life and made it through. And basically, I didn't always cope well with things, but I learned to cope well with things. And I did go to counseling, and I did seek different avenues of self-help, and I've read books and I've read things online. And it just comes to a point where when it finally took me really looking in the mirror and reflecting on what I see that I love and what I see that I hate. And then I had to remove the word hate, and I had to say what I love and what I dislike, but it's who I am.
Right.
And just as women are put in a box in society for what they're supposed to be, us men are put in a box just like in masculinity and all the different things. In order to lift that box off, we really have to take a look at who we want to be. Do we want to be generalized and stereotypically put in a box with everybody? Or do we want to be an individual who can step out of that box and say, I don't want to group think this. I
Yeah.
want to be an individual. Life is too short for me to live in this box. So
Right.
guys, I'm going to move out of the box, and you guys can come with, and we can all explore new ideas of what it takes or what it is to be a man.
Right. Right. That's totally it. That's the movement right there. And you touched on a huge concept in your own journey. You said that you took a look in the mirror, which we talked about a little bit. It was like looking
We
inwards.
don't like looking in mirrors
No,
as
we don't.
men.
No, we don't. We really don't. We don't like our own reflection typically, but
Never.
and you said that you looked at all parts of yourself in the mirror. What you said at one point you hated, but you
Yeah.
later just disliked.
Mm-hmm.
And that touches on a big thing, which we talk about a lot on the show is embracing your shadow side,
Yeah.
and that the parts of you that maybe you neglect and push down. The thing is, when you do that, whatever that is,
Yeah.
when you do that, the shame, the hurt, the resentment that you're holding, when you do that, that shit's going to come out eventually.
And it grows. The more you suppress it, the more it grows. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just a matter of when. It's a ticking time
Yeah.
bomb. So, what you see with a lot of men as they get later on in their life, they they have a big freak out, a midlife crisis, whatever it is, and
Gotta have a Corvette, something.
So Corvette, exactly. So why not deal with that stuff
Early on. Yes.
and not let it get to that breaking point?
Yeah, and it's taken me, being honest, till it was about 2014 when I really slowed down and stepped out of being me, being the old me, and saying, this isn't the me I want to be. I don't want to be this man as a father. I don't want to be this man as a husband. I don't want to be this man as a friend. And looking in the mirror, I don't want to be the man in the mirror right now. I know there's a better man that I can view.
Tough thing to do. Yep.
That is me. I can look in this mirror at some point and see the better man, but that right now in the mirror in 2014, I was not that man. I was not that reflection. And that's about the time I really took a journey and stepped into not just a journey of self-help, but a journey of like, what is the baggage I carry that I don't need? What is my childhood was horrific. We went through a very dysfunctional. My father was a murderer, a drug dealer. My mother had her own addiction issues, and while she got us away from things and set a better example later, we witnessed a lot of bad stuff. And so I had to really take a look at what was that baggage. How did that environmentally and mentally affect me? And then why did I carry it through my teens? And why did I carry that baggage and allow my family to continue to be unhealthy and me be part of it? And then work through my 20s. And at one point I went to prison, and served 3 years in prison due to my choices, as well as due to the environmental and crazy stuff that I had lived through. And then finally in my 30s, really finally slowing down enough to take a look at things, but not until 2014 did I really say, all this thinking is wrong. Everything I think is wrong. Everything the way I view life and the perspective I'm viewing life in is wrong. And it's what I've been taught, and what I've been taught is wrong. And so it really took time for me to slow down. And part of that focus in 2014 was the start of the base, the foundation was my spiritual side was broken. I had no spiritual side. While I believed in God, I didn't believe that God was doing anything for me. And while that was my belief, a lot of people, it could be a higher power, it could be whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be religion.
It does not be religious,
at all, in any way, shape, or form. And for me, it's not, for me, it's not religion. It's not about me and my wife going to church. While that's a good moral thing to help my son with and teach him at his age, it's not the focus of where my relationship with a higher power is, or it's not my spirituality itself. And so I started with working on my spiritual side, which was completely destroyed and broken. Absolutely didn't exist. And then I started focusing on, obviously being in reality, you got to have a job and a career, and you've got to have some sort of success in order to pay for and finance the lifestyle that you want to live. So I started focusing on restructuring my career and the avenues and owning businesses that I've had in the past, engineer's degree, all the things that I've accomplished, but just kind of blew aside that weren't that priority and important to me. And as a man, we're told we're supposed to have these things and achieve these things. but for me at that point, the spiritual, and then working on the career to set the foundation for stability for my son and my wife, gave me then the stepping stone to have the opportunity to really reflect in the mirror and take time to look in the mirror because the bills are paid.
Right.
And then say, what is it about you that makes you think this way? What is it about you that makes you feel this way? Because again, we're not supposed, as men, we're not supposed to deal with feelings. We're not supposed to deal with emotions, and we're definitely not allowed to express them except in anger. And that's what I had to look at. I had a bad temper. I boxed for many years, you know, and I didn't box to box for competition. I boxed because I wanted to knock someone's head off. And that was
to let that anger out.
That was it. And when you reach a point where you outside of the ring, you're not allowed to do that. Then you can't control that anger. There's no coping. And so it did. It took me on a journey that really had me reflecting on almost that who am I? Almost like who is this guy in the mirror that I've created in all these years? And here I am, 44 years old, and I still look in the mirror and say, you know, while I'm in a better place, there's still things that I don't recognize of who I am.
Right.
And so it's obviously
it's a journey, brother.
It's an endless journey. And I'm okay. I finally reached a point in my life where I'm okay with understanding that it's not me. I'm never going to reach the peak, but I'm always going to work toward the peak. And it's okay to stop on the way up to the peak, to camp out for the night and assess myself and have some self-care.
Yeah. By the way, it's okay to take steps back.
Yes.
As well. Sometimes we've talked about this before. You have to slow down to speed up.
Yes.
And that sometimes that means taking a few steps down the hill, as you used in that metaphor, before you charge back up and make another run. And that's perfectly normal and fine.
And sometimes, like you said, sometimes going back is a good time to regroup. Sometimes we leave things behind that we haven't dealt with. And so sometimes going backwards to deal with things before moving forward is actually more productive than just continuing on a forward path. And really working on deeper in ourselves. And I was fortunate many years ago when I was in prison. I ended up in a program, on a transitional program on the way out the door after 3 years, which they do, you know, in Florida. That's the main thing they do there. And when people are being released, they kind of put them in a transitional situation. I was blessed, and I say that most people aren't going to say they were blessed to be dealing with a prison situation. But when I was on my way out in this transitional program, I was put in a place called Reality House in Daytona Beach. And Reality House is basically a transitional program for not just prisoners, but addicts and alcoholics and a wide variety of things they help in the community. I was given 2 counselors, one Mr. Tom and one Mr. Greg. Mr. Greg was a former heroin addict who had turned his life around. This guy was a club owner, probably had more money than God at one point in his life. And he found himself on a park bench overdosed on heroin, and he lost everything.
Wow.
And then this guy, years later, obviously becomes a counselor and is a big impact in changing who I am. Mr. Tom strictly dealt in relational. So this guy was an old hippie, an old partying hippie. Him and his wife been married for frickin' who knows how long. But this guy's focus and his degrees were all in relational. And by relational, I don't mean just husband and wife. I mean friendship, stranger passing friendship, relationships in general. And between the two of them, they taught me so much about, and it was never brought up in this aspect of being a man, but it was teaching guys who are literally in prison. Okay, so there's guys there's guys in the program next to me who had murdered their wives, murdered people. These are men that are sitting in a group, in a circle, talking about relationships.
Wow.
And absolutely, like, I never thought I'd ever found myself there, but I did. And that was the stepping stone as well for me getting to a point where I was able to reflect on myself. But that was many years ago. And of course, I didn't take it serious until about 2014. But that was kind of it planted a seed into where I knew there was a different and a better way to be me, to be a better me.
So that was the first signal of awareness, the first thing that brought upon awareness within you to be like, whoa, I'm not in alignment with where I want to be. And question for you, when that happened, when you looked in the mirror and you were like, I don't like these things about me, did you also look in the mirror and say, this is where I want to be? Did you say, this is the man I am striving to be?
Yeah, I had ideas in my head of where I wanted to go, but it was so hard to get past my poor thinking. And I used to call it the stinking thinking. So I was so hard to get past that stinking thinking in order to like, I could say, yeah, in a few years, I want to be a business owner, which I am.
Right. Yeah.
Again, I've owned several businesses. Now I'm a contractor. I own a construction company. At that time in 2014, I did not. At 2013 and 14, I was homeless with my son.
Wow.
With a 5-year-old son, dragging him across the country homeless.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So that's where I was then. But I was so twisted in my perception of the world and myself that at that time, while I knew where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be, I could not focus on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so looking in the mirror, I could only see what was in front of me. And while thinking of what I wanted to be, I had no vision of what it was going to be, because I had no example of what it looked like. I had no example. My father wasn't an example. My mother wasn't an example. And I never have and never would point the finger that it's their fault. But because I didn't have an example of what a real man should be, or what a leader, better word would be, a leader should be. Yeah. So I didn't know how to lead my son. I didn't know how to lead myself. I mean, so yeah, I guess an answer, no. I mean, I really didn't know where I wanted to be, or see where who I was going to be or wanted to be.
Dude, yeah. And there you go. The power of male role models or leaders, right?
Yes. Yep.
Amazing.
For sure. We've got a little bit of time here. I want you to take some time to kind of tell the audience more about your show. More about where they can get in touch with you for your show, if they want to be a guest, if they want to discuss some of this stuff, but also where they can find maybe some resources through that. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So absolutely. So first of all, the show itself, it's called Slow Down, Man. Available on Spotify, available on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, if you're interested in being a guest on the show, I encourage you to reach out, or if you have questions, or just want to connect, send me an email at slowdownmanpodcast@gmail.com. And I'd love just to connect and chat. Also, I'm on Instagram at Slow Down Man Podcast. Yeah, sorry, what was the last part of your question?
Basically just, I wanted to, I think you kind of gave the outro on everywhere they could reach you.
Right.
What about some resources?
Resources.
What would you recommend for, like, if somebody out there that hears this and they're like, I want to know what they're talking about? Where would they start looking for resources?
They want to dig in deeper to what we've been talking about here.
Yeah.
I would say listen to the podcast.
Yep.
And after literally the guests that are brought on have amazing resources in this field. I link to all of their, all of their products, contact info. We talk about resources constantly on the show, like different books that you could be seeking out and whatnot. Eventually, we hope to have a website up and running where, with a resources page. If you're looking for resources, send me an email. I personally know a ton of different books and resources that have helped me, or that I know that have helped other people. So I'm happy to share that as well.
Excellent. And again, we do this short slot. We talked about this before we started recording. We do this short slot on the show just to kind of help the audience get to know you and who you are, and get our guests and the audience interacting. And we are going to invite you back. We'll probably do a 45-minute or an hour slot in the future.
Awesome. Yeah. Look forward to it, man.
For sure. I'll send you a link to that. We'll get you booked for that. And that way we can dig a little deeper into your show and dig a little deeper. Yep. This has been a great conversation. And I always enjoy engaging in conversations that tie right into the journey I'm on. And so it's great talking to you, and it's great to know that you're on that journey up in Canada, and here I am in Tulsa having the same journey. It just brings into perspective for the audience as well as myself that I'm not the only one out here trying to figure life out.
Totally. Everyone is, man. Everyone is. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I appreciate having you on here, and
such a pleasure.
Definitely going to get you booked later on for sure.
Beautiful. Look forward to it, my man.
You have a great day.
You as well. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.